Okay, welcome to another Orbiter 2010 video. And in this video I'm here on the moon sitting at Brighton Beach in the XR2. And I thought what I would do in this mission, in this video, is I'm going to take the XR2 from Brighton Beach here on the moon to Earth. And my intended goal is to arrive at Earth already in plane with the ISS, so I don't have to do that expensive plane change once I get back to Earth. Now if this sounds a little familiar, it's because I've done this before. So if you've actually seen the video, I was actually one of the first videos, if not the first video that I ever uploaded to my YouTube channel was showing how to do this. But something I want to do differently this time is I'm going to go back to Earth and use the atmosphere as a break before I rendezvous with the ISS. When I did this a year ago, I went back to Earth, arrived at the Earth end plane with the ISS, but I arrived at an orbital altitude of 300 kilometers or so, and I used the main engines of the XR2 to eliminate the 3,000 or so delta V. So I want to do the same mission, but I want to not use all that fuel. So let's give it a shot. Now the first thing that we need to do is check to make sure external cooling is turned on, which it is. And that's important because if you have external cooling off, then when we do our time warp here in a moment, it could cause problems. So I need to make sure that I'm going to leave the moon at the right time. So as before, I don't know if you saw that old video from a year ago, so I'll kind of go through things again. So I'm selecting the ISS. If I press F1, you can see, here I have the ISS selected, so that's where I'm at right now. And I'm going to bring up Orbit MFD, not that it much matters, but oh yeah, something else I'll mention is that this scenario is using up-to-date orbit or up-to-date elements for the ISS. So that's why the ISS is at 400 plus kilometers instead of the usual 365. Just for the fun of it, I went ahead and updated the elements just before starting this video. So over here in Map MFD, I want to change the orbit lines to orbit plane, and I'm going to select the moon as the target. And we have two opportunities to arrive back at Earth so that we're already in plane with the ISS. And that is when the moon is kind of crossing over this point here, where the moon is intersecting with the orbital plane of the ISS here, or the other one, or that one. And it doesn't matter which one you choose, but because this one's closer, you can see the moon is almost to this one, I'm going to choose this one. So the first thing I got to do is warp time forward. And this is why we have external cooling turned on in the Raven Star, because if we didn't, then it would be overheating right about now. And I suppose we can go a little faster than that. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to get the moon all the way over to that intersection, almost. And I'll explain the almost here in just a second. Okay, we want to leave the moon So in other words, we want our ejection burn to be done at the exact moment. Well, I mean, nothing's ever going to be exact, but as close as we possibly can to when the moon is exactly crossing over that line. So what we're going to do is we're going to warp time forward until the moon is almost up to that point. And the reason for the almost is because it's going to take us maybe an hour to get up off the moon, get into orbit, circle the moon one time, and then get to the ejection point. Actually, it's probably closer to 90 minutes. And I don't really know how fast this is moving, so I'm just going to eyeball it. And it doesn't have to be exact, so don't walk away with the impression that, you know, we're going for perfection here, because that's absolutely not the case. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be perfect, but the closer we are, the better off we are. But we will certainly get the job done as long as we're close. And you can see the moon doesn't move forward very quickly, so that's why we're trying to get very, very close. And we also know that the ISS orbits once every 80 minutes or so. So as we see that coming around, that kind of gives us a benchmark. I'm going to say that's going to be good enough. You know, somewhere like right in here, I'm going to say that we're probably now an hour or so away from the time when the moon will be at that exact point. So that's the first thing we do. Now I'm going to go back to the XR2. And set up my plan for getting back to Earth. And I'm going to use this view because by having the glass cockpit, I guess this is called, by having this view up, I can have these two MFDs already in a larger state, so I don't have to necessarily bring up external MFDs. Now, I did explain a lot about the basics of transects last time I did this, so I'm not going to go through and redo all that just to save a little bit of time. And I've also got so many other videos on transects that I don't think anybody needs to hear that, you know, what we're looking at here is the moon. And, you know, when I go to, you know, I need to press escape. I feel like most of that kind of thing is pretty well understood. And if you need that extra level of detail, you can always refer to the previous video. So we're picking escape. Gonna go forward on this side. And instead of planets, moons, I'm gonna select ships and then hit ++. It asks me what ship I want, and of course I want the ISS. And while I'm still here in setup, I'm going to come through the variables here, and instead of ecliptic, I'm going to pick plan for now. I may end up changing the graph projection to something else, but I'm going to start with plan and see if that works. And then scale to view, I'm going to pick target, and that basically, instead of targeting everything, which gives me this large view, you know, with the moon orbiting the Earth, I'm going to basically zoom in on the Earth by selecting target. So this is a zoomed in view of the Earth. And of course this blue line here is the orbit of the ISS around the Earth, and that line is where the ISS is at in its orbit. And if I go to graph projection, and actually I guess I was going to say if I pick focus I might get a better view, but apparently it doesn't matter which one I pick, it's giving me the same view. I just have to check this 1 second. Not important. But let me do that, because if I don't, it'll beep again in a second. Okay. Okay, so that's everything for setup. Let's go to the eject plan, and we'll start with the negative prograde. And the usual amount for getting back to Earth is somewhere between like 780 and 850, something like that. But we don't have to guess. We can see as we add in negative prograde, you can see this dashed orange line, yellow, whatever you want to call it. That line's coming down and touching the Earth. And this is our orbital path back to the Earth. If we go to view setup and we change the target, or we change scale to view back out to all, then you can see what's going on. We're leaving the moon here, we're falling back to the Earth, and we're getting down to the Earth here. So there you can kind of see what's going on, and that's what we're looking at in the target view, is we're looking at a zoomed in view of that. So this is clearly too low. I believe we're actually crashing into the Earth at that point, so let me just double check by... Yeah, it doesn't appear to matter which one of these I pick, so we'll stick with plan. Well, for starters, this is actually okay, because we need to do a plane change. And as I add in some plane change, it's going to have an impact on where this line is at. I'll show you what I mean. So you might think you want to have it out here, you know, where we're just touching the orbital altitude of the ISS, but it's actually okay if we have it down here for now, because what we're going to do here next is do a plane change. And right now, this is kind of showing us, this blue ring is showing us that our inclination when we get back to the Earth is going to be very inclined compared to the ISS. If you kind of think about a ring within a ring, this outer ring needs to be wrapped around this ring so that we know we're in plane. And let me show you what that means. First of all, let me add in a bunch of prograde or change plane to see what happens. And I'm seeing that as I'm adding it in this way, I'm adding in 682 delta V, and that's not wrapping around, so I'm going the wrong way. So let me reset it, and let's do negative instead. And by the way, as I add in the negative, you can see this line moving out. That's what I was talking about before. That's why it's okay if it appears, if it's actually down crashing into the Earth, because as we add in some plane change, it's going to move this line out. But as you see now that I'm adding plane change, this blue line, which again represents the ISS, this blue ring, it's starting to swivel around the gray circle, and that's actually telling us that we're getting more in plane with the ISS. And ideally, we would like it to be a perfect sphere, perfect circle. So as it's kind of wrapping around and this is pushing farther out, what I can do is come back to prograde and kind of pull that back in a little bit, and then go back to plane change and continue adding some plane change until that's kind of wrapped all the way around. I wish I had a model, like a visual aid, where I had a circle within a circle, you know, with those rotating discs, so I could actually turn them and show you what's going on here. But I don't have anything like that. But it looks like we're pretty well in plane at this point. Now, it would be great if we could just watch the closest approach here and kind of go back over to prograde, bring down our orbital altitude a little bit, and then, you know, maybe add in some outward if necessary. And you can see that that brings the closest approach way down. If I were going to try to do a direct rendezvous where I was coming straight back to the Earth and, you know, trying to catch the ISS immediately, I would do that. But since I'm not really doing that, I'm not so concerned about the closest approach, because I'm going to use the atmosphere as a brake. So when I get back to the Earth, it's not going to matter if I'm right there next to the ISS, because when I hit the atmosphere and start slowing down, our velocities are going to be so different that it's going to be way off. So it's not really a matter of finding the closest approach in this case. So we can eliminate that outward. There probably is a good position for the ISS to be in, because when we come back to the Earth, you know, we're traveling at 11 kilometers per second roughly. We're going to hit the atmosphere and start slowing down. So we may want the ISS to be closer to us than this, because that's, you know, close to a quarter orbit. So yeah, I think I might go ahead and add in a little bit of outward. Actually, first of all, let me get rid of that and see if I can close the distance with other variables first. And the other thing that's going through my mind is I don't really want to bring the altitude all the way down to the surface, or to 70 kilometers, because of the inaccuracies of transects. So I know that if I'm a little on the high side, I'm actually better, and I probably would be better being even higher than that. So I'm actually going to put that yellow or that orange line, I'm going to move it all the way out so that it's almost off the screen. It's unfortunate that you have to anticipate these types of things. It would be nice if you could put the line right there and it would hold, but it just won't. Okay, so that's got us coming back here. The ISS is going to be in front of us. And we probably don't want it to be that far in front of us. Okay. The blue ring is kind of not looking as circular as it was, so I'm taking away some of this plane change. Or rather, I'm adding in some more negative plane change. Okay. Now, I'm just going to put in a touch of outward. Because I kind of think I want the ISS to be closer when I arrive. trying to think if I want it to be in front of me or behind me. Because I'm going to hit the atmosphere, I'm going to start slowing down. But I'm going to be traveling a lot faster. So I think I want it to be in front of me. We'll go with that. I'm just kind of guessing at this point. So we'll see how that works out. Okay. So that part's done. I'm happy with that plan. So I'm going to shift my attention over here. And on this side, we're in setup. So let's go to graph projection and change it to plan. And the PE distance, I've explained this in tons of videos, so I'm not going to explain it again. I'm just going to add 20 to that number. We're going to go 1.758. That's going to be our PE distance. Like that. And now we want eject orientation. And I'm going to go out the long way. Like I've explained in other videos, when you're setting up the eject orientation, you can choose this side, or you can wrap it all the way around and come out and go and do your eject that way. You know, of course, you got to get it lined up like that. And this just is shorter. It's a shorter path. But in this particular case, I want the longer way around, because I'm actually planning on setting up a maneuver once I'm up off the landing pad, so I want more time. Alright. Now that I've got that set up, I'm going to hit Control S to save. And I'm going to go ahead and end this part of the video here. We'll just call this, the setup part, and then in the next part, which I'm going to start recording immediately, we'll lift up off the landing pad and get into orbit, and then eventually head off back to Earth. If you like this part of the video, go ahead and leave a comment down below, and I'll see you in the next part. And my intended goal is to arrive at Earth already in plane with the ISS, so I don't have to do that expensive plane change once I get back to Earth. Now, if this sounds a little familiar, it's because I've done this before. So if you've actually seen the video, I was actually one of the first videos, if not the first video, at the Earth in plane with the ISS, but I arrived at an orbital altitude of 300 kilometers or so, and I used the main engines of the XR2 to eliminate the 3,000 or so delta V. So I want to do the same mission, but I want to not use all that fuel. Okay, welcome to another Orbiter 2010 video, and in this video I'm here on the moon sitting at Brighton Beach in the XR2, and I thought what I would do in this mission, in this video, is I'm going to take the XR2 from Brighton Beach here on the moon to Earth. So let's give it a shot. Now, the first thing that we need to do is check to make sure external cooling is turned on, which it is, and that's important because if you have external cooling off, then when we do our time warp here in a moment, it could cause problems. That I ever uploaded to my YouTube channel was showing how to do this, but something I want to do differently this time is I'm going to go back to Earth and use the atmosphere as a break before I rendezvous with the ISS. When I did this a year ago, I went back to Earth, arrived